Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about SurrealEstate Season 2, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, the team is kind of scrabbling without Susan around. You can tell, that's a massive void, and it's Zoe's trying to pick up kind of the psych. Luckily she is, she's kind of like the receptionist, but she's also doubling with her role of kind of handling a lot of the listings and stuff like that. So they are kind of scrambling. I love that I hate when I do that, when I'm just calling him by his last name first. Luke was going to deal with one house, but the moment he found out August went to a house, it's whoa, he's going to be the first representation of this agency to a client. Okay, I'm gonna go check it out. And it's yeah, August isn't, that's out of anyone at the agency, the last person you want to be the first representative of the agency is August, just being the weirdo oddball that he is. But the house that Luke's storyline revolves around is an artist named Aurora, and I love the parallels with Luke. Just like the whole situation. I think it's obviously a big part of this entire season, because episode 2 deals with it, episode 3's dealt with it, and even 4's dealt with it, of just Luke trying to figure himself out without his abilities, and he meets an artist who's in a similar boat. For her, it's actually really sad, but it's also this beautiful, powerful element to her story where she came here after, art school, and she was married but got divorced, and she got sober here. This place made her feel like she really became an artist. All her great work that she's done as an artist, she started fully really painting when she came to this house. The house inspired her, because for her this house meant so much. This was a fresh start for her. It was her, because her husband never physically abused her, but he made her feel small, and she wanted to never let someone ever make her feel small again. Prove that she existed, leaving proof that she mattered. And I think that's all any human being wants, is to kind of have when you're gone, that there be proof that you matter, that you exist, that you won't, that someone can't just erase you in an abusive relationship like her husband was trying to. And this house that was her sanctuary, that became the physical representation of her legacy and just who she was, is now kind of screwing her over. It's messing with her. And that ends up being this really interesting conversation for Luke, because she's worried that, what if I leave this house and every, bit of my mojo as an artist goes away? Luke's going through that. He's lost his supernatural mojo, and he's struggling to figure out who he is outside of that. Because him and August had that conversation earlier. August wants to, use some it's more expensive, but kind of hey, we should really lean into the tech side of things, because yes, we don't have your powers to lean on anymore, so we have to adapt and change, they kind of compensate for that. And just Luke's been just not necessarily stagnant, but is still just kind of wandering to the dark in a lot of ways. And I love the parallels of that story, because Luke was talking about kind of change coming, and I thought it was interesting when he was basically you can see the possibility of change, and you basically get on one foot and you squint and you can see it as destiny. It was I'm butchering it, but it was actually really amazing and poetic. And so they're packing up and trying to leave, but Aurora can't, eventually to the point she gets possessed. Now, Luke can't hear the ghost like he could before, so he needs her to be possessed so that he can figure out what this spirit wants. Because initially they're thinking it's a very specific ghost that live in this place, because one of the previous people that lived in this place died a long time ago. He stayed, 1890 is when he lived here with his wife or whatever. But the guy was kind of a sham of an artist, because he would pay off critics to say oh, his work is so amazing. And I like how that does ultimately tie into the episode, because it turns out the messages that Aurora, the person who's trying to sell her house, kept getting was, it's time, finish her, it's time, please. And ultimately we find out Scarlett Warren is the guy's wife, and it turns out that she was a real artist, but much like Aurora, her husband, made her feel small. She had to hide herself for his ego because he couldn't stand the thought of her being a better artist. So the picture that's up there, it's the same picture that Luke had said, like, yeah, I packed this away before, but then all of a sudden it like returned because that was the centerfold of all this. It's like, I think it's supposed to be his painting, but on the back of it, what was hidden beneath was her actual painting because once again, she had to hide herself. It's like the question then becomes like, well, did she hide herself or did he hide her? Either way, once again, it was meant to make her feel small. And then, like I said, that parallel with that's why when Aurora moved in, that's why Scarlet like attached to her because they had like very similar situations and the promise that she had made to herself. That Aurora had made, like it resonated and connected with Scarlet's spirit, and that's what this was all about, finishing her portrait. Like it was like a self portrait to basically keep herself around. And the sad thing is that he like hid this, like this was hidden away. She had to hide away herself, and she could never fully truly be herself because she had to be small around him. He made her feel small, and so I thought the symbolism of Scarlet. Wanting her portrait, her self-portrait finish, it is a symbolism of I existed, because the only things that were left to remind that she was here was a birth certificate, a death certificate, like a marriage certificate. And sadly, like obviously that marriage certificate, it comes with that stipulation of like, oh yeah, like it's the only thing that proved that, like that being in a marriage that wasn't really good, for that to be like one of the things that kind of defines you. And that plays into Aurora's story too, because by completing Scarlet's picture, you will be able to kind of set her spirit free. But Aurora's worried, like, what about me? What if my talent and everything kind of goes away? And Lucas said, like, that's kind of like that's the catch with this situation. It's like, are we just, what was it kind of basically? It was almost like, are we just amalgamation of what people make us? Or, where do they end and where do you begin? But then like Luke said something very beautiful and poetic, that it's like, basically your experiences, you as an artist, your marriage, this house, Scarlet, all of these elements form and make you into the unique individual. That is like, it's kind of along the same lines that each and every one of us are unique in our own regards. Yes, there's similarities, but we're all unique because we are all defined by our experience. Our experiences have a major impact on who we are, the people we meet, the things we go through. Like it parallels in that same vein. And Aurora finishes the painting at the end of the episode, and we see her leave, and we see Scarlet puts her signature on it, which I thought was kind of a beautiful bow tie to that whole storyline. But once again, just what this means for Luke going forward, being like, where does he go from here in the aftermath of everything? And so I thought that was just kind of neatly done. And so I'm curious, as we continue down Luke's journey of figuring stuff out, will he get his powers back at the end of the season or near the end of the season? And even if they do come back, will it be like based on some technological element that August like cooked up, or will they naturally come back, or will something August does jumpstart his abilities? Will they be exactly the same, or will they have changed just like he has on this journey without them? So a lot of that's going to be interesting to discover. So we have that, and another side of the episode follows August himself. He ends up meeting up with an old associate, Michelle. I kept wondering the entire time. I didn't look this up before I did this started this recording, but I was like, why does that actress who plays Michelle seem so familiar? And I could be mistaken, but I believe she was in Lock and Key. I believe that's the actress who played the older version of Erin. She's in season 1 and season 2 of Lock and Key. I think that's the same actress. I could end up looking super foolish and it's not the same actress. Strong possibility, but it seems like, because it's like she looks so familiar, and that's the only thing that came to mind that might be what I'm thinking of. But like I said, it could be two different actresses, and I'm completely wrong. But either way, I'll correct myself in the comments down below about that. But either way, it turned, obviously August had this connection to this, what was it, kind of weapons, and it was like a tech and defense company called, what was it, Astra. and he left it because his point of view of like, right, technology and everything, it's amazing, but he was not a fan of like them weaponizing and just, because I mean, sadly, that is how that stuff works. It's like, okay, this cool technology we made, that's awesome, but you only get funding and you become big dog once the military realizes like, oh, the technology you made can have militaristic applications, which August is not too much of a fan of, and it seems like that was a big division between him and Michelle. They did not end on the best terms. She had heard about like, oh yeah, I heard about your wife. I'm sorry. It's like, well, she's like, I would have reached out, but we didn't end on the best of terms, and I think she probably didn't feel like it was appropriate. So, and I kept wondering this entire episode. It's like, well, we know he's currently single, so I was curious whether, I mean, the episode kind of goes in that direction a little bit, but I kept wondering the entire time. I was like, are they going to set that up? He is, single. The kids are adults out in the house and stuff. So, because I love that storyline also revolves around what the episode with Luke and stuff, and Luke and Aurora's story was about, and that was about change and what it can mean. I thought that was interesting. But essentially, August, when he was working for Astra, ended up creating an algorithm that gathers information, but more specifically, he tweaked it so that it would search for information to the beyond, kind of giving you answers to what lies beyond, life and death and what's out there beyond that. And it's called, what was it, Duster, and it's been basically trying to reach out to August. So he has to come back and put in a password, but then it has like a thing where he has to put in a root password, or it's going to start deleting all this like billions of dollars of worth of information that of Astra, and it's like if this all goes away, it's irreplaceable, so it would be their downfall. So it's like, all right. So Michelle kind of had to make a deal with August. I love it, this situation. He's able to be cool, calm, and collected and get his way. And it's just, I do really enjoy their back and forth, because it is this thing of like, before it probably was, I think it is a thing of just being older and wiser and just having that perspective of August is outside of all of this now. So yes, he still kind of takes his shots against Astra because he doesn't believe in everything they represent. But once again, it's more so about the company and not the people there. Like him and Michelle have their differences of opinions, but it's not like a hateful thing. It's a playful tit for tat thing that they got, which I think is kind of adorable. But basically, Duster like had gathered all this information and it wanted to show it, basically download it directly into August. I thought like, are we going to download this in his brain? I feel like that's going to be an issue, but it's basically like they put like virtual goggles on him and he's kind of witnessing everything. And this thing kind of like shows August everything that it's learned. And for him, it was such a transformative experience because it is the thing that shows you, it's like, it basically showed you nothing and everything everywhere all at once. But it made him kind of realize, and I thought was beautiful, he was like seeing like kind of like the answers to the universe and stuff and what kind of goes beyond what's there but what isn't. That the long story short, which I even love, Michelle is like, right, after all this, you want to basically tell me the answer to the universe is YOLO. And August just kind of shrugs his shoulders, kind of like, yeah, that like, right, don't get so caught up in looking for the answers. The questioning forever is kind of the important thing, because even when you try to find answers, I don't even know if that's necessarily an important thing, but just like even when you try to find answers, all you're going to find are a myriad of more crazy out there amazing questions, and it just comes down to just live. Let's stop focusing so much on death and live our lives, and obviously Michelle wants August to return to the company. He's kind of like, maybe one day, but for right now, he wants to kind of continue on the path that he is on outside of all of that. Because for him, once again, it's not about, it's like, oh, so she was kind of like, oh, so you're going to kind of leave me behind again. And it's like, no, not you, just the company. Like, once again, it's like, and it's funny how these changes in life can, make some stuff come back into your life differently. And kind of making a point of like, oh, you remember that place we used to kind of hang out and not show each other our root codes or something like that, which that obviously there's an innuendo there connected with like the conversation that they were having before earlier in the episode about the root. It's like, oh, we didn't share each other roots code, because she's like, oh, you didn't trust me. It's like, neither one of us really shared our root codes. But it's like, she had made this whole point that like things change, and August was like, yeah, they do change, and sometimes for the better. And they ride off on the motorcycle together. So who knows what that might mean in the long run, whether it's like beyond just friendship and it becomes like an actual like relationship in a romantic sense, or whether it is just like a rekindling of old friendships, that it's like, yeah, things aren't the same, but sometimes things changing and under different circumstances is a good thing. It's for the better. So I thought that was just kind of, like I said, this continuous beautiful theme of change resonating across both halves of the episode. And we also catch up a little bit with the Susan situation, and it's exactly what I thought it would be. The house is pretending to be her. It's like, oh, I'm sending these emails, being like, yeah, I'm going to take even longer of a sabbatical. But then also, like, Zoe gets hit with, like, all of, like, well, not just her, Phil, too. We don't know if it got sent to Luke or August, but it definitely got sent to them. Like, every, like, listing and a bit of information regarding Susan's listings. Because at first I was like, well, the thing doesn't want to let Susan go, the house, so or whatever the entity is. So we don't know what its end goal is. Like, I guess it latched on to Susan and it doesn't want to let her go. Once again, we know like she's tied to this place because of her childhood and something maybe back then. Maybe it connected with her dad. Maybe her mom might be a solution to figuring this situation out. I'm sure this thing's going to cover its bases, but where things end up, it basically sent in a letter of resignation, but it didn't sit well with Luke because he feels bad because it's like he knows that he's kind of been pushing her, and I think he wasn't willing to let things change, and now he is a lot more open to change. So it's like, right, we need to talk, but she's like, no, we're not going to talk, and adds in the toodles just like Susan did like last episode. So, but I don't think Luke is going to let that go because maybe something in that resignation didn't sit well, or like I said, maybe it's just purely because the conversation of, hey, I'm learning to kind of accept more change, so I want to approach this a little differently. So maybe there's a little bit of that, but then maybe there's also the element of like I brought up, like her mom. Maybe her mom will get a message from her. It's like, this doesn't sound like my daughter. It seems off. We never like are away from each other this much. So, like I said, what this thing's trying to get from Susan, who knows? We'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. How long will it, like, will the team immediately jump on this next episode figuring out something's wrong with Susan, or will it take a few more episodes before it really, but it's like, they know, because it's like, with what Susan's been dealing with recently, especially with like specifically Luke, no one would probably think too much of her being like, yeah, I'm quitting, like, you know, especially with the whole conversation of change on all the storylines being a storyline element this episode. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because it can only fake things to so much of an extent. I mean, most likely, if they show up to the house, the thing will either create like a fake Susan, either like it'll create a fake Susan body to be her. It can definitely probably replicate her voice to be like, hey, go away, I'm fine, leave me alone. So it'll probably be able to make phone calls because it can send text messages and stuff. Maybe it hasn't quite gotten to being able to replicate her voice yet, but maybe it eventually will, which will add validity to it parading around as her. Well, like I said, we'll have to wait to see where it all takes us from here. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.